The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. Joining me today on the panel are Thomas Sanjurjo. Hey, Thomas.
Hey, Dom. How's it going?
Great. And Jack Baruzzini. Hey, Jack.
Hey, Dom.
Folks, I want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest Network you are certain to enjoy called Let's Science. If you're a Secrets of Tech listener, you're going to want to listen to Let's Science, and you can find that wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/science. And by the way, it's a great show. Carolyn and Lindsay and Lino do that show, and they're from Australia, so you get the great accents, and it's like 20 minutes. It's a real brief hit, boom, and they're always entertaining, and they always have very interesting sciencey subjects to dive into. So definitely check that out at sqpn.com/science. So for today's main topic, we're going to be talking about we've talked often about ChatGPT and other large language model services, software, sites, whatever you want to call them out there, AIs, if you will. And there's a lot of fears, uncertainty, and doubt around them. And people, they're worried about them becoming Skynet. They're not going to. They're worried about people using them to cheat in school and all these other, fearful things. But the fact is these have become some fantastic tools that people use every day for all kinds of things. And there are a lot of hucksters out there promising the world, but we want to kind of cut through all of that and talk about first ways that we use ChatGPT and maybe other, large language model services that are like it, as well as some other use cases that you might consider that you might not have thought about that maybe you would benefit from. And so I want to start by talking about the ways we use it. And Thomas, you've mentioned you've used it in work, right? At your job. Could you tell us a little bit about ways that you use ChatGPT or if you use ChatGPT or any of the models, and what ways you use them?
Well, I think we're going to get into a lot of the more kind of general ways I use it, which is, how to write emails and make your emails sound better. Or if you're really mad and you've written a really mad email, how to make that email not as angry, right, when you're trying to communicate with somebody. And then stuff like that, making presentations, we'll get into all that kind of stuff. But one of the really interesting things that we've started to do, we have to write a lot of like shell scripting code. And one of the hardest parts about writing code is getting started and having decent boilerplate code to just kind of write from. And so like I can debug code a lot faster than I can write it myself just from a blank slate. So I do that all the time with ChatGPT, where I'll just like poke in something that I have a task that I need to get done, and I'll just pop into ChatGPT and say, I am trying to do this. I need to use this shell scripting language. I need it to not use these functions. Write me a script for it. And it will write a shell script that 9 times out of 10 will work or get me close enough to what I need to really just take offline and work on it. Sometimes I'll even just sit there and just say, hey, this line didn't work, or I don't like the way this line works. I'll just copy it back into ChatGPT and say, could you fix it? And ChatGPT will apologize and then fix whatever the problem was or explain what was happening and why it might have gone wrong. And I'll do the reverse too, is to reverse engineer stuff. If I've got a piece of code that I don't understand what it does, I'll just grab that piece of code and throw it into ChatGPT, give it a little bit of context, and then ask what's going on here. And it'll spit back out a decent enough answer that I've got the right next steps to do something with it.
Excellent.
Nice.
How about you, Jack? Do you use it in your everyday job? And
I do. A lot of what I use it for, like in my professional life, is if I'm doing like documentation for different IT procedures, I'll ask it to give me, say in very like messy, unprofessional terms without all the legalese. Like, this is what I need. And then it will give me a template that I can work off of. And usually I'll take that and I can adapt it for what I need. And that's really helpful. Or I'll take, if I'm writing documentation for certain procedures, I will take what I've written and throw it in there and ask it to clean it up and format it and kind of make it more readable. Because as I'm working on that stuff, I'm not usually focused on the particular readability of it. So it's really good at punching up documents.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So I use it a lot making podcasts, and a couple of the ones that I use it, ways that I use it, when I do a show, say like with Jimmy Akin, I do Mysterious World, and he'll throw 15 links at me. These all go in the further resources. We need to put them in the show notes on the website. I'm like, okay. And the way I used to do it is I had these laborious script that I would have to, look it up, grab the title, paste it in, create the HTML. And then I had like an automation script, but I have to do it line by line by line by line. Now, all I do is like go into ChatGPT, open it up, and I say, change this list of URLs into an HTML unordered list of links. And I just paste one per line, boom, 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 hit enter. And it gives me the whole thing properly formatted with the titles, the proper titles, everything. And saves it that alone, it saves me time. I really love that.
That's the thing is, like, I think a lot of people are worried about it being cheating or something like that. And it's just a tool that is cutting down the time to action that you can make. And so, like, you need something done and you're going to learn how to do it one way or another. You're going to go and find a website. You're going to have to dig through like 20 different generated websites that are fluff code and random junk, and find the answer. And it's going to take you time to do that. Or you just go to ChatGPT, put the question and do it. Be critical about it. Don't just take the answer and throw it out there. If it's not worded the way that you would word it and you're trying to make an email, tell it, say, that's not exactly how I would say it. Maybe make it less formal, and then it'll do a little bit less formal. So be critical about it, but use it as a tool to shorten that time to action.
Mm-hmm.
And like my HTML list thing, I could write, create a JavaScript or an Apple script or, something, which I did partially to get me there. And I had to find some regex and all sorts of weird stuff online to get me to this thing that required me to still take a little bit of time to do. Whereas, this is just another automation. It's just a sophisticated one that doesn't require me to learn a language. I can just tell it, do this automation. And that's all that is. So that's one way I do. Another thing I do is this is kind of the workflow. I'll take a podcast once I've finished it, and I'll grab the audio, and I have a program on my computer, on my Mac, called Whisper Transcription. And there's a Whisper AI large language model that is really good at transcription. It, hearing the audio and translating that into written text. It's not perfect. You should see what it does to Father Corey Stiga's name, but it calls him Stiga, S-T-I-G, very often. But actually, Whisper Transcription lets you say, this is wrong. Whenever you think it's this, always make it the correction. So that it does have that in it. But what it does, it creates a transcription fairly fast. It'll do like an hour-long show in about 10 or 15 minutes. And I take that very long transcription. Now, there's a problem with ChatGPT is it can only take up to something like 4,400 characters in the prompt. And so these transcriptions are way longer than that. And so what I found was somebody came up with a tool. I'm not sure exactly how it does it, but I think there's a way to string blocks of text together to ChatGPT. Hey, keep going, keep going. To get around that limitation. And so I'll put a link in the show notes. There's something called SummaScript, like summarization, transcript summarization, SummaScript, portfoliopals.net/SummaScript. It's like the Summa Theologica, SummaScript. And you just paste your text in up to 200,000 characters, which, I mean, even the longest Mysterious World shows are not over 200,000 characters. And you can say, give me a long summary, a medium summary, or a short summary. And I even with the long summary, I grab that, then I bring that over to ChatGPT, and I say, rephrase the following podcast episode description as a dynamic and engaging social media post under 250 characters long. And what that gives me is not a perfect, and almost never can I just use it straight off of what it gives me, because it, sometimes what it decides to emphasize from the transcription is kind of odd from the summary. But very often I get something pretty darn good. Let me grab, let's see, the latest coming up this week on the Secrets of Stargate. They'll be just talking about the episode Smoke and Mirrors. And what it gave me was Colonel O'Neill framed for assassination. Sam Tailkin Jonas turned detectives. From mimetic devices to shadowy organizations, we dissect every twist. And so on and so forth. And it puts in emojis, nice. Appropriate emojis and stuff. And I'm like,
oh, that's rad.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, I can write a pedestrian tweet, but this, is pumping it up. It's jazzing it up. It does a little bit more. It's like I was 30 years younger than I am, So, I mean, that's a workflow that I go through to do some of this. And again, like I said, I don't ever use it straight out of it, because the stuff that's like, now that's dumb. That sounds stupid. Fewer exclamation points, that sort of thing. And then I can always go like, you know what? I need another one of those. Give me another,
right.
Tweet, and so on and so forth. And it's like, wow, this is so much better than having to, like, I sometimes agonized over these things, trying to get it down short enough to fit into a tweet and all this sort of stuff. And this gets to the heart of it. And one of the things in fact, I love doing this so much. I use this so often. StarQuest, I got a paid account so that it's using the latest language model and that sort of thing. And it's well worth it. It's in the time it saves.
Nice.
Yeah, I was going to say that's one thing I'm actually I'm figuring out how I'm going to afford that, because one of my buddies showed me this, and this blows my mind. As a teacher, what he was showing me blew my mind, because we do this programming thing all the time. And so we had 2 CSV files we had to compare, and he's like, you got to check this out. Watch, I'm going to run it through mine. And he has the paid subscription, so he did ChatGPT 4, put the 2 CSV files, told it what they were and what we wanted to compare, and then he said, now watch this, and you can watch it do what it does, and it talks you through the decision tree that it's making. So it like actually conversationally says, okay, so first let's try this, and then we're going to add this, and then we're going to do this thing to it, and then it gives you a result, and it says, this doesn't seem quite right. I could either do this or this, and if you don't like either of the choices, you just give it another option, and then it runs with that. But it conversationally tells you why it's making the decisions it's making. And as an educator, I'm watching this and I'm going, this is phenomenal to sit a kid down in front of something like this and give them a problem that they need to work with this machine to solve, and then have it sort of talk them through the thought process. And you do that multiple times with an apt student. It's not going to work for every student, right, obviously, but for a lot of students, this is the way I learned, right? This is the way that I work best, is like by watching somebody sit there and make bad decisions and fix them on the fly and explain why they did what they did. And it was amazing. Like watching this, I was like, I could seriously just learn a programming language just watching this thing do what it does.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's really impressive. Like I am super gigged about where this is going and how the applications that we can put it to, And I was thinking about, my days as a teacher where, if you have a student that has a poor paper, and instead of just giving them a bad grade and saying, redo it, say, okay, I want you to take this. I want you to go to ChatGPT. I want you to put this in, and I want you to ask it where you would make improvements, and have it walk that student through the thinking process of what it was that they did wrong. And not that they, were lazy or that they did, but like where were the decisions made in their paper that they could have done better. And that to me is it's an incredible tool to really open up, because it's a predictive language model. Like the whole concept is that it works based on what has returned well before. Mm-hmm. And that, so you're getting the wealth of experience. Like, a lot of people are like, the self-driving cars thing is kind of disturbing to them, but you've got millions of hours worth of driving built into this automated driver. And it was from watching actual drivers, and that's how it learned. And in a similar way, these language models learn that way from actual text that was produced by people, which is another issue that we can get into. But but it's interesting that that's where they were trained from.
Right.
Something that I really like to do, and I've started doing this more recently, is when I'm doing creative writing, like I like to write like science fiction, stuff like that, but I'm not like a space engineer, so I don't really know a lot of that stuff just off the top of my head. And I've been able to use ChatGPT to ask questions about technical details that I could spend hours and hours researching. But this really gives me the ability to at least get a starting point. And usually what I'll do is I'll put in what I want, like kind of a general idea, like how do orbital mechanics work, things like that. And it will give me a good summary, and then I can use that as a jumping off point to research, because I'm not going to just take what it says uncritically. That's been really helpful. And another thing that I've just recently discovered is you can ask it for, like, here's an example. I said, give me some names for characters, base them on modern names, and account for linguistic drift over the next 1,000 years. And it will generate a list of the modern name, and then it will give you a new name, and it will base it off of linguistic drift, which is fun because that's something I'm really into, like when I'm creating characters and stuff for stories, but I'm not a linguist, so I wanted to at least be somewhat authentic sounding, and that's been really helpful.
I remember as a kid,
that is cool.
Getting into, RPGs and stuff like that. And I was like, if I needed names, I'd open up the newspaper and pick a random first name and a random last name. And that was how I picked people's names. But I would love to have something better than that. And this is the thing. People might say, like with the orbital mechanics thing, well, why don't you just go to Google and Google it? Like, or what explain orbital mechanics? But this is something you can have a back and forth with. Now, eventually, my guess is you'll be able to do that with Google. I don't expect Google to stand still with this. But, there's a back and forth. Okay, but what is this part of it? And I don't explain this part more and make it simple. Treat me. One of the best things you can do is say, explain it to me like I'm 5.
Yeah.
Or 15. Or, you know what I mean? Like I'm a lawyer, or, like explain something to me technical as if I'm an non-technical person, and it will really change the way it phrases things and make it, which I think is amazing. I want to give another example of something I did that was kind of silly, but shows you, it kind of goes off of what you said, Thomas, about teaching you. I was having a conversation with someone. Remember the Powerball was like $1 billion a couple of weeks ago, a month ago or so. And I was like, okay, so if you win, you get the cash payout. I was trying to explain, if you take the cash and then invest it, you're going to end up with a lot more money than if you take the annuity. That's the whole thing. And he wouldn't believe me. So I said, okay. I went to ChatGPT. I wrote, calculate annual growth over 20 years of an initial investment of, it was like $315 million cash, that has a 6% average rate of return, so annual, but also distributes 4% as income annually. And then it goes, to calculate the annual growth over 20 years, blah, 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 blah. Let's break down the calculation step by step. And it goes boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, so the annual growth over 20 years is approximately 110%. I'm like, oh, okay. What would the total investment be worth at the end of 20 years? And it wasn't quite giving me what I wanted. So I'm like, what would the income distribution be each year? And then recalculate with the 4% annual income distribution coming from the total compounded growth at the end of each year. Like, I was getting more and more technical and I finally got like this, it gave me the income distribution for each year. In year 1, you would make 12,600,000. And by year 20, you're making 22,075,000, that sort of thing. And it really breaks down the whole thing. I'm like, it just became an interesting exercise in having this thing calculate stuff for me. I'm like, if I was working on investments or retirement stuff, this would be a great tool for that sort of thing, because it talks you through it and walks you through it. I could have done this on an Excel spreadsheet if I knew what I was doing, and maybe I could download an Excel spreadsheet from somewhere, but this was so much easier.
And you came out with terminology. That's the thing, is like you walked away from it with new words that you probably knew, but you didn't have a context for them. And now you do.
Right.
And beyond that, you had an actual real world example that you were able to talk through. And, that's and it's not just stuff like that you can do it with. You can do it with daily tasks too. Like say you do need to make an Excel spreadsheet that accounts for several different variables, and it's for your job, and you just want to make the report, and you would normally have to sit there for 2 or 3 hours just putting all the numbers together and figuring out what the calculations are going to be. And, oh, you didn't account for this thing. Now you go back through and fix it. Just start asking ChatGPT. Say, hey, ChatGPT, I have this information. I need to get this information out. And just start that way, and then work your way through it. And the one thing I will caution here is the longer you talk to it, the more likely you get into that kind of hallucinatory terrain. But you'll know when it comes. You'll know when the language model starts acting up and kind of going off the reservation, because it'll start returning things that you're like, I don't know, that doesn't sound quite right. And what I'll do at that point is I'll just copy the last thing that it told me and just start a new chat. Right. And that kind of does a refresh on it and just cleans it out and gets it started over again and say, hey, we were talking about this. Can you explain a little bit more what was meant here? And it'll clean it up.
And shorter conversations are better. So at the current state of things, and that's the thing, is all this is changing as we speak. But at the current state of things, like you said, shorter conversations are better because of when you say it gets hallucinatory, the language model kind of starts getting wonky. It starts returning weird data, weird information. Like, that's not quite, I don't think that looks really weird and that's not real. And so you do have to kind of stay on top of it. Another one I did, I was doing a puzzle game and it wanted me to find a national capital. It was like national capitals, and it was like this random island in the middle of the South Pacific, like the island nation. I had to find, it was 400 miles away from the one that I'm supposed to guess. I'm like, I don't know what, I can't find the capitals of those countries. So I just asked which nation's capital is about 440 miles north, northeast, or northwest of Tarawa, the island. And, it gave me a list of capitals. I'm like, oh, that's what it was. I think it was Honiara, Solomon Islands, which I should have known. But it's like, even for fun, frivolous things like that, that's the sort of information. Like, how else would I find out? I tried Googling it. That didn't work, but it has all of this data there, and it's all about making connections between things. And that's what it's really good at.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'll give one more. And this is one that I, toyed around with, and I thought, okay, why not do it this way? This just makes perfect sense to me. And it has a lot of interesting results. So I want to be very clear about, be careful the way you use this. But writing your resume is a perfect use for a generative AI like this. And I'll explain a couple of things that are going to happen here. First off, when you're writing your resume, one of the things that they recommend is you rewrite your resume every time you get a job that you're looking for, and you rewrite your resume to match that job. This is a phenomenal way to do it. You get the job description, you go into ChatGPT, you give it your resume, you give it the job description, say, please rewrite my resume to fit this job description. And it takes your experience and matches it up to what the job description is looking for. So it just finds the places where they match and then puts them in. Now, the one thing it does that's really interesting is it puts in all of these great things that you've done at your current role, and they're complete fabrications. Right? They're total lies. But it's really good because what you do then is you look at what it said and you find the spots where it says, this is where you need a statistic. This is where you need a measurable result of something that you've done, and just replace it with something you've actually done. And it gets you over the hump of the automated resume review process, because you know that there's an AI on the other side of this that's reviewing your resume. Well, you've just had an AI write your resume to the exact specifications that AI is going to be looking for on the other end of it.
Right.
Nice.
Yes. Exactly. Use the machines against each other. Let the machines fight it out. Mortal Kombat.
I will say on that note, when you're using this, be careful about what personal information you put into it. Like, don't be pasting your social security numbers or your bank account information, like that kind of stuff in it.
Right.
Like, I think it's fairly secure, but again, you shouldn't be pasting those into text boxes anywhere.
Right. You should use the same precautions that you would anywhere on the internet, and not put your sensitive personal information in. one of the things you can do is, like I mentioned before, is with the paid plan, you can enter in, what would you like ChatGPT to know about you to provide better responses? That's what it says. Mm-hmm. And so I've, put in, I'm a professional podcaster who runs a network of Catholic podcasts and YouTube shows that explore the intersection of faith and pop culture. I'm older than so-and-so. I'm male, Catholic, husband and father of 5 children, born in and lives near Boston, Massachusetts. And it can use that, sometimes not well. Like sometimes it over specifies. When if I'm not specific enough in a request, it'll think I really want something to do with Catholic podcasting, when sometimes I don't. That's not what I'm asking. I'm looking for something more generic. So that's a little bit of a caveat to consider. One of the things I've used it for is to make recipes, to say, look, I've got these 4 main ingredients on hand. Give me a recipe that I can make, that I could do on the grill, that would be kids under the age of 10 would want to eat, an average kid under the age of 10 would want to eat, so on and so forth. And it's given me some recipes. I'm like, that was actually a pretty good soup,
right.
It's not high cuisine, but it wasn't bad. It was a decent meal, because again, there are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of recipes on the internet that it's probably all looked at and analyzed and see what goes, because a recipe is simply what things go together well.
Right.
Yep.
And in what order and what proportions.
And how to prepare them. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what you need.
Right.
One fun thing that I've tried on the creative side of things is asking it for different chord progressions, or I even had it write me a tune for the bagpipes one time. It was a terrible tune, but it's interesting that you can do that kind of thing with it. And it's fun because if you're kind of in a creative rut, it will give you a good starting off point to work from.
It's a brainstorming tool in one sense, it's a sparking tool. It sparks that ideas or gets you started.
Right.
One of the tips,
and that's the hardest part. It's that inertia, right? That like you're sitting there and staring at a blank page, and that's the worst because you just need that little bit of a start. And even if you disagree very strongly with what it's put out for you, that's great, because that's then you've got something to start with.
Right. It's something to push against, that's So one of the tips that I've seen a lot, and it's a good one, is you can tell it to imagine that it is. Imagine that you're a high school teacher. Imagine that you are, you can get specific, that you are a high school teacher teaching Catholic theology to 9th graders. Explain the concept of such. And frankly, you actually will sometimes get better results by telling it to imagine that you are than if you just say, explain the concept of such and such. Even when you say explain to a 14-year-old, like just the giving it a role to play. Sometimes it's interesting. I'm not sure exactly why, but you sometimes get some better results that way.
Yeah, and if you're in the mood to have some fun, you can ask it to pretend like it's Macho Man Randy Savage, and it will talk like him too.
I can imagine some very fun things you could do like that.
Please rewrite this email as Macho Man Randy Savage.
Okay, brother.
So, let's talk about some other, maybe not things that we ourselves do, but some potential use cases, and whether from work or home. One of the ones that came across that was interesting was having it help you make a home maintenance schedule. You tell it what kind of home you have and what kind of, like I have a gas burner for heat, and I have, a refrigerator and dishwasher. Like you give it all this information about your house, and then you say, give me a plan and schedule for regular home maintenance tasks, from cleaning to seasonal repairs, that sort of thing. And it will require massaging and, adaptation to your particular circumstance, but it'll give you this starting place, this list that you will do, I didn't realize I needed to do that. That's one of those tasks I think I keep forgetting to do. I better go do that now. In fact, it's that sort of thing where it kind of fills in those gaps of your knowledge. So what else would be something that you'd pick, say, from home life uses?
I like using it for meal planning. It's very good for that. You say create a meal plan for the next 2 weeks, and you can even ask it to format it as a Excel. Be like, put the main ingredients in a column, put the meal in the column, do breakfast, lunch, dinner, and you can give it parameters too. Like my wife is dairy free, so make all the meals dairy free, and it will give you a nice diverse list of food.
Oh, cool. That's interesting. How about you, Thomas? Anything leap out of you?
You can, I use it to automate routines, and to improve your routines. So think about things that you do on a routine basis, feed it in those things and say, what could I do here to improve this routine? And a lot of times it will find ways that you're wasting time moving between one thing and another. And it'll say, you could probably move this thing to this spot and it would save you a certain amount of time. And it's just little stuff that you don't think about that's, I don't know. I'm guessing it comes from blogs that it's read where people have suggested micro improvements and stuff, but it does a lot of times return really good suggestions about how to organize different things that you're doing in your day. And it'll say stuff, it's stupid stuff that that you've heard somewhere, but that you've never really put two and two together. And it's like, make sure you prep your clothes the night before so that you don't have to use that decision-making power in the morning. And it just little stuff like that that's really amazing. So, just take it for what it is. It's a tool that kind of looks at a wealth of stuff that's been suggested and gives you some things to try. And so it's not the be all end all, but it's definitely got some room to help you out with stuff that you don't think of on a day-to-day basis, but that if you just throw it at something that has these other thoughts to it, this kind of collective imagination, it can help.
One thing that I've used it for is for suggestions for things to do with the family. Like, for example, say you're going on vacation and, say I'm going on vacation to Boston, and I could say to the ChatGPT, so there's 7 of us in the family. There's I'm adult male. My wife's, this age. We have 5 kids, and they're this, and this, and, ages. Our interests include fine art, museums, hiking outdoors, give it the whole thing, and then say, give me a list of 10 possible things to do on vacation with my family in the Boston area in the month of July. And it will give you a really interesting list. And sometimes by number, you probably should say 10, put a limit on it, because if you let it go on too long, you get into that hallucinatory, with that doesn't exist. Riding right. Unicorns, I'm pretty sure not a thing, or whatever, I don't think it gets that crazy, but you say, give me 10 ideas of things to do on a week-long vacation in the Boston area with, under these parameters. And it does. I mean, it's a great thing. Or you could do for a day out, even if it's just within 5 miles of this town, say the town where you live or whatever, give me 6 great hikes that are of beginner level, difficulty for hiking in the spring in this area, and it will come up with them, and it's really great. I mean, you could Google it, but a lot of times you get all of these random sites and these weird, and which one do I pick? And this just gives you 6, and then you can go look those specific hikes up, say, or those specific places to go on vacation up, and it gives you that starting point. You can go, that's really not for us, and that won't work at all. But these ones are good, and it's this again. It's like having an assistant who gathers all the data for you, all the information for you, and just lays it down in front of you on your desk, and you go, this, but not this. It's almost like you're one of those, one of those people on Wall Street, and you have this assistant, and I need a tie for tonight for this dinner. Get me 6 ties and let me pick one. That one, and that's kind of what you're doing here with this AI.
It is. Yeah. Another thing I'll do is, because the nature of my job is very highly technical at this point, and the teams that I work with are very highly technical, and the stuff that they talk about is all in acronyms. I have ChatGPT open in another window, so while we're having a conversation and they throw something at me that I've never heard of, I have no idea what this thing is, I'll just go over ChatGPT, hey, what's this thing? And it will spit me back a response that says, this is generally what it is. And I know enough about what I'm doing to know the accuracy more or less of what it's done, but at least it's given me kind of the general space to have a decent conversation about what we're talking about without me having to say, I have no idea what you just said. So could you explain it to me? Now I can ask intelligent questions about it. Like what kind of tool is it? Like, what does it do exactly? I know those questions to ask and to really dig into it a little more. So it is phenomenal for that kind of thing, where if you're in an asynchronous conversation, or if you're having like a video chat with somebody, you have another window open, to just be able to type in a really quick, the person I'm talking with just mentioned this. What is it? Give me a brief summary. And it'll summarize kind of what it is for you without you having to go to all of the different spots on the internet where you might find an answer and read through, 20 pages of preamble before you get to that actual summary of what the thing is.
Right.
That just reminded me of another use for it that is really fantastic. If you find like a recipe online that you really like, 9 times out of 10, I feel like they're on those blogs where the person feels the need to include their entire life story. I've started just taking those links and I'll paste it into ChatGPT and say, hey, strip just the recipe out of this and give that to me. And it will take it and pull all the extraneous stuff out and just give you the recipe.
Oh, when did we learn about how Grandma gave that recipe to her on her deathbed?
I see this. There's a part of me that it hurts my soul talking about this because who was, I forget who it was that said this, but digression is the soul of wit. And it's one of those quotes that's just stuck with me. It's an author that said it. Oh, Ray Bradbury, that's who it was. Yeah. Digression is the soul of wit. And it kind of hurts this, but at the same time, the internet's not much better. Like looking up things on the internet, when you get results back from Google, it's really not like with my kids. I encourage them to use an encyclopedia because there's discovery along the way. Mm-hmm. But with the internet, it's not very often that you discover something along the way, trying to find an answer that's in any way valuable or enriching to your life. No. So
it's more like digging through the junk to get to the diamond in the rough. Yeah,
exactly. And this just cuts through the junk, right? It just cuts the junk and gives you that diamond that you need. And then you can take that back and do some more research about it and find out some more information. But yeah, it cuts out that initial research phase that's so hard to get over. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that requires so much time and investment.
So we could go on a lot on this. I mean, there's so many more, and there's a lot of YouTube videos of people giving you advice on how to craft your prompts. Prompts are really valuable for this, and they get into specific areas. Before we finish up, though, I want a couple more caveats I want to mention. Is one of the limitations that the data that ChatGPT has access to only goes up to, at the time of our recording, only goes up to September of 2021. So anything that you reference that has happened since then, it won't know about. So I asked it a question about inflation. If something was worth $13 in 1988, what would it be worth in 2023? And it's like, I don't have access to that. But here's the formula. If you get access to the Consumer Price Index, here's the formula you could use to plug it into it. And that was useful. I ended up finding a website that has an inflation calculator anyway. But so just so you know, its data set only went up to September 2021. I'm sure that will advance over time. The other thing is to, as we've said several times, verify critical information. Mm-hmm. Make sure, don't just trust that. I think the more general something is, the safer it is. But the more specific it is, the more you have to be careful, I think is safe to say.
Yeah.
Use your judgment. And just don't take it and paste it.
Generally with very specific facts.
Yeah.
What it's doing is placing a fact, like the generic term, a fact. It's something that should sound true. So don't trust like a specific fact. Just realize that whatever it's stated in that spot is, I know that there should be something here that like, there's a story of the lawyer that went through and like made a whole case from ChatGPT, and they came to find out that all of the cases were faked.
Yes.
Like ChatGPT just created, because it knew, as a predictive language model, it knew I should put next a case reference. And so it just made up a case reference to throw in there. It didn't actually like have those cases in front of it to reference properly.
Right. These things are only going to get more powerful, more useful. These limitations will start to fall over time. But I don't think we need to be afraid of these programs. They're not Skynet. They're not self-aware. They're not going to take over. Not all of that fear that people have. It's just a really cool automation tool. It's not even conversational, really. You know, when it says it's sorry or I'm happy to, it's just automated. It's programmed to say that, to make it more pleasant.
Right. It's
not actually saying these things. So it's important to remember. So we'd love to hear if what interesting uses that anyone in the audience is making of ChatGPT, things that we might not have talked about, or if you have further questions about this. And, you know, we may come revisit this with some more ideas and, you know, tips and things that as we continue to use it, if we come up with new uses, that would be something we could discuss further. But we'd love to hear from you, how you use these large language models. And you can let us know by sending us an email to technology@sqpn.com. So before we move on, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the secrets of technology, including Karen V, Jeff K, Michael C, Warren C, and Ricardo G. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the secrets of technology and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. I don't say it often, but StarQuest is a 501c3 nonprofit, and so your donations may be tax deductible depending on your situation and where you live. So we would greatly appreciate your support to keep going. So let's talk about some headlines this week. Our first one is interesting, and I get the right guys here for this. Steam is the gaming store platform from Valve. The company Valve makes Steam. And one of the things they do is they keep track of the different operating systems so Steam is sort of like Netflix for games, except you're buying them. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's like
iTunes for games.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably a better analogy.
Better. Yeah, because you're buying the games. Anyway, they keep track of who's using them and what systems, what computer hardware you use. And no surprise, most of the people are using Windows PCs on it. But Linux is a significant portion. And this article from the beginning of August now, so it's a little bit back, but showed a spike of Linux use on Steam to jumping nearly 2% in July, which makes it larger market share than Mac OS, which is interesting to me, especially. And one of the things they attributed to is Steam OS, the Steam Deck. So what do you guys think of this? I mean, you see this chart, and it's not just really Linux. There's only two Linux distros that are up. There's Steam OS and Pop OS. Everything else is down. So it's really Steam OS that's really growing. What do you guys think of this?
I think it's honestly not that surprising, because with the popularity of the Steam Deck, a lot of people are either just getting into using Steam on the Steam Deck itself or have migrated over from using Windows to using Steam. And the cool thing about Steam OS is that you could just install it on a computer if you wanted to. Right. You don't have to have a Steam Deck. And I think that as more and more people are exposed to it through the popularity of the Steam Deck, it's becoming something that people have actually started putting on computers.
That's an interesting idea. If you have a powerful enough computer, the Steam OS is actually pretty good for playing those Steam games.
Yeah.
and you can, you can either dual boot or have a dedicated drive that's just for gaming. That's one thing that I've considered doing, even with my Linux machine, is just having a dedicated solid state drive that's just games, just runs SteamOS, so that everything's on that SSD, nice and clean, nice and fast. And that's all it does. And so then when I boot, just boot into that instead of into my main rig, play the games, and then I can boot out of that and over to my other machine from there.
Right. Because this Steam Deck is a really nice portable hardware, but if you don't, consider about the portability of it, just putting it on a PC computer,
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. The way we use, I have a Steam Deck, and most of the games don't run on Mac. No Man's Sky does, which is fun, but most of the other ones don't, and so we often game on it. I've been looking at ways to get the Steam Deck screen on my TV, via HDMI, and there's a dock. It has a. Don't
even bother with it. Use Big Picture.
What's big?
Do you have a smart TV?
Yeah.
Oh, we're going sideways here. This is dangerous, Dom, because this is awesome. You can use the Big Picture mode on Steam, and it will find your smart TV on your network, and you can actually just stream from your computer to your screen.
I might have to turn something on. I never set up the smart TV smarts of the Samsung because Samsung, but
yeah,
I may have to connect.
I don't know. I don't know that I ever really. I mean, I have some of it on. No, yeah. We'll connect after this.
Okay.
But yeah, that's definitely an option.
All right, we may have to bring this up again. We're going to be doing an episode in the near future on non-gaming uses of the Steam Deck, and maybe we can incorporate that into that episode because that would be nice. Cool. All right, so our next headline is Raspberry Pi availability is visibly improving after years of shortages. So when 2020 rolled around and everything shut down and everything went to heck in a handbasket, one of the things that got affected was the availability of the Raspberry Pi, tiny, inexpensive computers that everybody loves. They're just these wonderful little Linux computers that you cost nearly nothing and can do so much. But they became as rare as hen's teeth, and it wasn't just because of supply chain issues, where they couldn't get components. It turned out that it suddenly also became very, very popular among commercial buyers for industrial uses. And so they just were snapping them all up. So Raspberry Pi, the company, has recently been able to ramp up their manufacturing so that they could, as the article that we'll link says, manufacturing numbers have climbed from 400,000 monthly units to 1 million. So that 1 million units, so that they can, start getting through the backlog, and so that regular consumer purchasers can start to buy them again. And I know that friend of the show, Jeff Geerling, who we had on a while ago, is a huge Raspberry Pi guy, and he's done a few videos on his YouTube channel about the Raspberry Pi availability, and even went to England to visit their factory and interview the CEO. So you should check out his channel for that. But what do you guys think of this new availability? And does it signal a change in priority for Raspberry Pi? Because there's some criticism that they were supplying commercial over the consumer. What do you think of this?
I just hope that I can finally find one for less than like $150 online.
I know, right?
Because yeah.
Yeah, it was out of control there for a little bit.
Right. If you could get one, they were super expensive and they got snapped up right away.
And it's hobbyist projects suffer from it because, like I use them for my 3D printers. They connect to the network. They're really snappy. They just run light, and they're great for that kind of thing. But I can't justify dumping $150 on it when that's like the cost of a printer.
Yeah, right.
I can buy a whole other 3D printer for that. It really does not scale to that height. So yeah, just being able to put like $25, $30 at it and have it, used for a hobby is great. I really don't think that they were trying to push commercial. I think there was just a lack of chips, just everybody who was in computer space was suffering. And if chip prices go up too much, you can't afford to make a tiny, cheap computer when you have to pay almost twice as much for a chip that you were getting for much cheaper beforehand.
Right.
Mhm.
I mean, when you hear stories about like Apple buying up the entire production of a particular capacitor or something like that, you know, for the whole year, like it's not even just like the CPUs, it's all the other components that are out there that need to be. One of the things that they said was, you know, like they're still waiting to have them have new models come out. Like the Pi 4 is over 4 years old at this point. You know, they haven't had the Pi 5 and the things that come after. Do you think that this may give them a goose, and so we start to see some updated versions of these?
It's possible, but I kind of think that the Pi 4 is still doing exactly what most people need it to do. So I don't really see the need for a newer model, to be honest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you end up going more specialized if you need more juice or more specific functionality out of you tend to go to like an Arduino or something that's a much lighter board, or that has or then you get into just a regular computer. Like if you need something bigger, you're going to get into a server board or just build your own basic computer. The 4 really does I mean, it's just reliable. It's just a great reliable little piece of hardware.
Yeah, it is amazing. Well, I mean, when you see that it's being used in industrial uses, commercial uses, you know, it's an amazing little piece of technology that's been designed that does it so much for so little. It is really a marvel, frankly.
And then it runs Linux, which can run on anything. Like there are many computers that I have saved from the scrap heap because I'll just throw Linux on it. Yep, it works.
Right.
Yep.
So our next headline is AI related. And so the headline is Wizards of the Coast updating artist guidelines after AI art found in Dungeons and Dragons book. So Wizards of the Coast are the publishers of the Dungeons and Dragons role-playing game. And there was a new book coming out of, the Big B presents The Glory of the Giants. And so it's a source book, for use in the game. And those books always have tons of artwork. I mean, I remember when I was a kid that, the artwork in the D&D books was, a big attraction. And so somebody found that one of the artists making the art for this book had used AI, probably Mid-Journey, based on how the art looked, to make these pieces. Now, he's a regular artist who's worked for Wizards of the Coast since I think 2014, the article said, but he just took a shortcut, maybe thought this was perfectly valid. But there are concerns. A lot of artists are concerned about AI taking their jobs and, this sort of stuff being used. And it's a shortcut. And maybe Wizards of the Coast thinks that they don't want to be paying human generated rates for stuff that someone could generate off of a Mid-Journey with a prompt. But what do you think of this one?
I mean, I kind of think that if you're going to be, you got to be upfront about where you're getting your stuff from. And if you're going to be so lazy as to not even like I could totally understand like taking something like this. And again, like we were talking about using it as for inspiration, but just printing it out and using that straight is kind of sketchy. Right.
There's an article that's linked from it on Gizmodo from the article that we'll have that shows the art and the original and the reworked version. And the one of the ones that makes it clear is the hands.
Yep.
Earlier, yep. Mid-Journey's always better now, hands. But it was terrible with hands before. And so yeah, there's this ethical concern about, what are the parameters of art? We've talked about this before. Thomas, what do you think about this?
I mean, I think this is a big part of what makes D&D D&D. And so I'm going to go for the RPG route of this. The original art and the interest. And this is what will make or break whether I buy a book, too, is what the art looks like. So if it starts going to AI generated art, I'm out. I'm not buying anymore. So I'm glad that they're taking a step to say, hey, we're gonna make a rule about this, and I don't know how they're going to vet it exactly, but I'm glad that Wizards of the Coast decided to take a stand on it and make sure that it wasn't something that artists are going to start abusing. And there's kind of a series of tweets from this artist that seemed to sort of justify what he was doing, which was basically just taking concept art that he had made and polishing it up with generative AI. And that came back to bite him in the end. But it's basically that he hadn't finished his work and he just used the AI to kind of finish it off. So he had a concept and he shows the concepts and compares the two of them. I don't know if the posts are up anymore, but it's interesting to think that an artist can kind of get lazy too in the process and not complete a work. Maybe they had a concept that they went through, but then they used AI to just jump over that last 20% of it. I would rather it be, honestly, the first 20% done by the AI,
right,
and then you finished it off and made it a polished piece of actual art.
Because the last 20%, the last 20% is the part that's the hardest. Like,
right,
if you can take a stick figure and work on that and make it much better. But if you're kind of reversing that, then you just didn't put enough time into putting your work together.
Right. And that takes us back to the beginning of the show where we talked about using the AI as a way to get past the blank canvas. So if he used it as a way to give him some ideas to start with, the rest of that is him. And I'm not sure if Wizards of the Coast would be okay with even that. I'm not sure. I would be, but I don't know what line people want to draw, especially with artists. But I'd be okay with using it to generate ideas. But like you said, that last 20% of an artistic work is the difference between professional level work and rank amateur. There's a big difference. So if you've ever seen an artist do working, that's a huge aspect of it. So that'll be interesting to follow and to see where else that comes up. Comic books and other places like that. This is not done. It's something to be aware of. All right, let's move on to our picks of the week, and let's start with you, Jack. What's your pick this week?
My pick this week is something AI related. Google has this thing called the AI Test Kitchen. And basically what it is an early access page where they have these different AI projects they're trying out. And the one that I've been looking at is called the Music LM. And what it is it's basically a language model AI generator for music. And you can put in different kind of things like syncopated, funky jazz to listen to at a wine club. And it will give you these clips of audio that kind of sound like what you're asking for. And it's not like it's good polished music, but it's just fun to play around with. And it's, doesn't cost anything. So it's more fun AI trinkets to try out.
I remember years ago a website where it had all these little sound loops, and you could these blues loops, and you could kind of combine them together and make, funky song. It wasn't fun, fine art, but it was just kind of fun to combine. And it would be nice to have AI that could take that to the next step and make them sound better together, not just kind of meld them together. I like that. There's apparently a wait list, but if you put your name in, I'm going to guess it wouldn't be too long to get through that wait list. Excellent. So Thomas, what's your pick this week?
So mine's sort of low tech, but I'm going to bring some high tech to it and talk about how to use AI to make this more functional. I got into bullet journaling a while back. I think I've talked about it on the show before at some points, and I finally got my wife into it. Took a long while, but she couldn't find a calendar this year that worked for her. So I was like, there's this thing that I've been doing. She was like, okay, fine. And she is like way more into it than I have been, which is awesome. Like, she's really invested. But it's great. It's a system of using a journal. So it's not necessarily a piece of technology, but more like a system of using a journal. And one of the things I always found really challenging with it was coming up with topics to write about. So that's not necessarily a big part of bullet journaling. Mostly it's just tracking things that are happening. So it's keeping track of tasks and managing where things are working out. But there is a journaling component to it. You do want to write. Like you tend to get to a point where you want to actually put your thoughts on paper. And I always had trouble with that because again, blank page, right? So I went to ChatGPT and I said, hey, ChatGPT, can you give me 365 journal topics? And I just printed a list out of these short, and then I had to tell it, could you make this shorter? Because it did like these really long, it's just like, I need a list of just like one line question to answer kind of starter topics. And eventually it got to the point where I had like a really good list of, it came up with about 50 that I liked. And I put them on a piece of paper, printed them out, stuck them in the back of my journal, and then just kind of come back to those. And after you've done it 50 times, it's kind of going back to the first one is still enough to get a fresh response out of you. It's been really good because it's actually, the prompts are not bad. The prompts are, they get over that blank page hump and they get you started. And even if you don't like the prompt, at least you don't like the prompt. And like I said, you're looking at it and you're going, yeah, I'm not going to write about that today. And then but something else comes to mind and you actually do write about it.
Nice. Yeah, I do a daily journal myself. I use an app called Day One, which was a previous pick of the week, and I've used various systems like this for 25, 30 years now probably, and it's really useful to keep a journal, just to think about things, and even if you're never going to show anybody this, even if you never go back and look at it, it's a way to process your thoughts and to get them down and to get them out of your head and stop ruminating on them if that's a thing that affects you. And bullet journals, I've looked at them. I don't use that method, but it's a cool method, and I recommend people check it out. We'll have a link in the show notes to a website on all about bullet journaling. But good use of AI to help you with it. That's a great idea. I've used ChatGPT to help me generate blog posts and blog post ideas just as a starter. Just fun. So my pick this week is a website that I think you guys I've talked to both of you about before. It's called Tinker, Tynker, tinker.com. This is a way to get kids coding. I have a son who has aptitude, and I wanted him to start trying to learn some coding stuff, some programming. And so Tinker it's a lot like a lot of these other online tutoring systems like Khan Academy. And so it has progress, and like it has exercises and walks you through these concepts, and then it grades you on whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced level with the concepts. And it's very systemized and regimented in that sense. But it really will teach them coding basics, the concepts of coding, what's involved, things like, and so his like programming basics is the first part. And you get 40 lessons, 179 activities, 30 minutes a lesson, and they'll learn ordering tasks, sequencing, building a program, critical thinking, problem solving. It even gets them into, using actual Python, which is an actual language that's actually useful. Most WordPress website pages are built using Python, I think it is these days. Oh no, PHP, that's different. But Python is a useful language. You can also do things like learning different programming concepts using Minecraft, which is actually a different class he's taking elsewhere, but it uses Tinker to do it. So in any case, it has a student portal with it gives them all their access to all their exercises. There's also a parent portal, and then there's a teacher portal. So if your school, a school can have this, and the teacher can use it from a teaching perspective, which is different from what a parent needs to look at. So I'm glad that they separate those out. And so I can see his progress, see the last time he worked on it, and that sort of thing. If you sign up for it, you can do a quarterly, yearly, or you get a lifetime membership. An annual membership, which is probably the sweet spot, is $192, which is not cheap, but not terrible, not for a class
it's not
like
bad
this.
For a year, yeah.
Yeah. What's really great is if you have a nice big Catholic family and you have 3 kids that want to learn programming, or if you want to learn alongside, the family plan gives you 3 accounts, and that's $240. So
yeah, that's
a great deal for the whole family. So Tinker is it's a great starting place. It's not going to after he's gone through all this, he's not going to immediately leap into making the next great iOS app or something. But it's the place to begin, learn all this stuff. And then from there, he or she can go to the next level of learning how to be a programmer. And today, learning how to program is not a bad skill to have. Even if you don't become a professional programmer, understanding how all of this stuff works is really useful. Let me tell you.
Oh,
well,
definitely.
And just those basics right there, that'll help you start, go ask ChatGPT. So I want to do this. How would I start?
Right.
And then from there, you're off to the races.
Yep, that's right.
I can vouch for Tinker from the teacher perspective too. I used it in the classroom with grade school kids, and it was great. It was fantastic at their level, really accessible to them. So yep, like 4th, 5th grade teams I had working through Tinker. So.
I would say that's the sweet spot of the age group. Yeah, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. I'm going to have to see if I can introduce this to my son because he loves playing Minecraft, and I feel like that'd be a good gateway to teaching him about programming.
Yeah.
There you go.
The way we got started with the Minecraft thing, we use a program called a system or service called Homeschool Connections. They're a online homeschooling resource. They have classes. And in fact, Mike Creevy, who's on the Secrets of Star Wars, is also a Homeschool Connections teacher. He teaches theology courses for them. So my daughter took a class with him, which was funny. And
that's kind of cool.
It was pretty cool. But they also have things like programming, and my son took a Minecraft coding class with them that used Tinker. So yeah, Minecraft is a great tool. And there's in fact a whole Minecraft for education thing, which we can talk about another time, but it's a great tool for learning this stuff. So yeah, excellent. So that will do it from us this time. What did you think of our discussion of anything we had to talk about today? We'd love to hear from you, and you can do that by commenting on our show at sqpn.com/technology or the StarQuest Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Send an email to technology@sqpn.com or visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord. I'll put links from our discussion and our picks of the week in our show notes at starquest.fm/TEC225. That's Tech 225. That's today's show number. You can follow The Secrets of Tech in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or at our YouTube channel, youtube.com/StarQuestMedia, where you should make sure to hit the bell so you get notifications of new episodes. Until next time, Jack Baruzzini, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of technology.
Thanks, Tom.
Thomas Sanjurjo, thank you as well.
It's been great.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.